Hey guys, how's it going? For my first full game video, I'm featuring the Massachusetts. More specifically, the Massachusetts B from Black Friday 2021. These are essentially the same exact ship with no difference in performance except one looks good and the other looks really good. And for those of you that have been following my channel, you have no doubtly noticed that I have way too many clips of this ship. Simply put, that it's the ship that I go to when I want to have fun and do well. It's also my most played ship with the combined around 4,500 games between the Massachusetts and the Massachusetts B. And in this video, I'm gonna try my best to go through my thought process as to what's going on in my mind for this game, um, just to help out some of the players. I see battleships, sitting in spawn bow and reversing, shooting at other bow and battleships reversing far too often. And like I am now, clearly trying to make use of a crossfire. I noticed the North Carolina and Colorado were both mid-spawn heading to the opposite side and shooting at a broadside, and I'm able to get a citadel and get a good chunk of damage out of that Colorado. And after taking a quick look around, I noticed the Massachusetts is just charging in. So I start to angle my battleship so I can get all my secondaries to start shooting at him. I use my enhanced secondary targeting consumable, and when you use it, Massachusetts has some pretty laser beam accurate secondaries, although shooting at destroyers with it tends to underlead them more often than not. But at this range against a battleship that's pushing in, the secondaries are actually able to land in the superstructure fairly often and give you some good chunks of damage. And this Massachusetts just procced my running with scissors legendary skill. This is definitely not a skill that a whole lot of people will use, but I find it to fit my playstyle very well because I like to push in battleships and brawl. I'm able to get a pretty good chunk out of the Massachusetts superstructure, and I see those torpedoes coming in, and he dies to those torpedoes. Now, looking at the map, and from where I saw the New Orleans, now I know that both Atlanta and New Orleans are behind islands or heading to the other side. So at this point, there's no sense in sitting here waiting for them to pop out. I decide to push in. And as I'm pushing in, I notice that the North Carolina and the Colorado are both still pretty much in their spawn. Colorado's still giving broadside to this side. Apparently, he didn't learn his lesson the first time. So I'm gonna try to take a shot at him and see if I can remove him from the game. Unfortunately, I don't think I quite led the shot right. I think I underled it. Or maybe he had propulsion mod and simply sped up. Yeah, there's my shells falling behind him. Now, as I'm pushing in, I notice that the Udachi gets spotted, but I also see that the Atlanta is also pushing into the middle cap where our destroyers are, who are effectively pushing the Udachi out of the cap. Now, I have two choices here. One would be to shoot at the Udachi and try to help kill him, or shoot at the cruisers who are going to be shooting at our destroyers while our destroyers are trying to kill their Udachi. Now, I take my first shot at the New Orleans and not a single shell hits. That's sometimes what happens when you use running with scissors on battleships. But I keep pushing in and notice that the Atlanta is also charging in. Now, radar cruisers against our destroyers are, a very big threat, and I need to remove him to save our destroyers so that they can continue to hunt down the Udachi. Fortunately, the Udachi actually ends up dying, and I'm able to dev strike the Atlanta and protect our destroyers from radar and taking more damage that they don't necessarily need to. I continue pushing in towards the other flank, and I notice that the New Orleans is still just sailing broadside, and you can only get away with this for so long. I decide to take another shot at him. He seems to be slowing down to stop. Take my shot, and it looks kind of a bad dispersion, but it actually ends up dev striking him as well. So two dev strikes back to back. At this point in the game, I'm thinking that these battleships will keep pushing south, essentially to the left. And what I want to do here is try to use this island to turn away as they push, effectively giving me an opportunity to start kiting away if I need to disengage. I do not want to get stuck bow in to battleships and have to reverse. I don't use the propulsion mod, so I'll be reversing much slower than if you were. So turning away and having the option to disengage is a pretty important thing. They still have one more destroyer on the board. It's a Benson. And as I'm turning away, he actually gets spotted near our Gneisenau on the left flank. So I call target on him, hoping that our low health Gneisenau is actually able to finish him off. I unfortunately shot, so I can't take a pot shot. But unfortunately, that's not how it works out. Our Gneisenau goes down without actually killing the destroyer. Now that I have a better idea of where the destroyer is, me turning away is actually a pretty good thing, because now the destroyer will eventually be chasing us along with the rest of their battleships. And since I have some time, since he's so far away, I try to slow down and have my secondaries do as much as they can. The tier pits does reverse out of my secondary range, but I'm trying to keep as close as I can so my running with scissors doesn't affect my dispersion too much. And there's not really a reason to just start running away immediately, full speed. So I just sit here and try to deal as much damage as I can to this bowing tier pits. I see that North Carolina is slowly moving forward, and I will have shots on them eventually. Our Monarch, that was somewhat on the left flank, is now near us, and where the middle spawn is. And starting to think that their destroyer is getting close. It's been a couple of minutes since he was last spotted, so I start accelerating. The North Carolina is slowly peeking around the corner, and that ship has an overmatchable bow, and with this first salvo at him, I get a pretty good chunk through his bow, and you'll see in a few seconds that my prediction of where this destroyer will be is actually correct, because he shows up and accidentally gets spotted. I target him with my secondaries, and once my guns are loaded, I'm gonna take a shot at him to kill him. Take a shot, and again, not a single shell hit him. That may not have been fully running with scissors, might have also been part to overleading him in his turn. Now that he got spotted, I know for a fact that there's torpedoes on the way, so I turn away, and there are torpedoes, and unfortunately our Bliskovica eats the torps that weren't meant for him. So, making a full turn, I know I can stay closer to the tier pits now that the Benson's launched his torpedoes. He won't have them for a couple of minutes. So I start pushing back in and getting my secondaries to start working on these battleships. The Benson is in his smoke and starting to shoot, and sometimes in the heat of battle, I'm not actually able to look at the game clock and figure out just about when torpedoes are start coming back. So another effective strategy is watching this Benson salvos coming out of the smoke, seeing that they're still coming out at a consistent rate. And as they are, the way you tell when torpedoes are coming is if there's a pause, or if he switches to shooting salvos instead, then you'll know there's torpedoes on the way. So as long as I pay attention to those key factors, I should be safe. Pushing into my running with scissors range, I'm able to set the tier pits on a double fire with my secondaries. So at this point, I know even with will to rebuild, he will go down, and he does. And I take a shot at the North Carolina's bow, and I'm able to overmatch him, and I citadel him through the bow, getting a double strike. And now all that's left is their Benson. And here in the game, now with one destroyer left, my decision to shoot 2 cruisers was actually turning out to be the right play, because now we still have a destroyer that's going to be able to chase down their Benson, and being able to save both of our destroyers early on really helps, especially when one of them ate some unfortunate torpedoes, and now we still have one more destroyer that can chase down their Benson. At this point, the game's pretty much over. He had 204,000, 4 kills, 2 dev strikes, high caliber Confederate, and a double strike. So now we end up just chasing a destroyer around, hoping that he'll get spotted, instead of just running around and holding the game hostage for another 5 minutes while we win on points. And fortunately, he actually does get himself spotted, and him being on that low health, it doesn't take much to remove him from the game and me securing the Kraken. So this actually turned out to be quite a good game on my part, and I was able to do a 206,000 game with a Kraken. I was able to get 2,800 base XP, so pretty good game, and a fairly good example of battleship positioning and priority targeting certain ships. Now I'm going to move on to my build. So, secondary battery mod 2. Massachusetts is a secondary battleship after all. I use damage control systems mod 2 so I can have 40-second fires in combination with my commander. Target acquisition mod. I will be switching to concealment mod whenever that comes out. And lastly, artillery plotting room, just to try and make my running with scissors not affect my accuracy too much. I have messed around with the secondary battery mod 3, getting my secondary reload to 4.8 seconds, but ultimately I feel like this build fits my playstyle the most. My commander of choice is Optimus Prime. The closest commander that's not paid for would be Willis Lee. So I go with Revocation Protocol. This is the skill that helps get my fire durations to 40 seconds, and it's also effective with spotter planes. The next skill is Porcupine, another secondary skill that gives more range, dispersion, and grouping. Firefighter in the third row, on second thought, is kind of useless. And even in the fourth row, Master Mechanic is kind of the only choice to take, as the other two are not really that useful. And as my legendary skill, I use Running with Scissors. Most people will probably go with Will to Rebuild, since that skill is just so insanely strong. Or maybe even fight fire with fire if they absolutely hate HE spam and being on fire. Most of my builds now, though, I tend to use Running with Scissors or fight fire with fire, not really Will to Rebuild, just because I don't like the idea of having your teammates sit next to you the entire time, especially if you're in a division with a destroyer. Making him sit next to you and instead of going after other destroyers, kind of a waste of time. My inspirations, I use Haruna and Franz von Hipper. Both of them are secondary related commanders, just to maximize the efficiency of my secondaries. Now, Haruna was a collaboration commander that you had to pay for, so if you didn't have Haruna, then obviously other choices would probably be Andrew Cunningham for main gun grouping, or even Hans Geisler for secondary battery reload. Now I'll just show you all the ship's stats and how the commander skills affect it. Secondary build, I'm able to get a maximum of 11.1 kilometers of range, so that's a pretty good amount of range and area denial. But that's pretty much it for this video. Leave a comment down below, let me know what you guys think. Let me know what kinds of other content you would like to see, maybe just raw gameplay, no commentaries, maybe even leaving some, build suggestions, and maybe I'll try to use them and give my own opinion on them, see what you guys use out there, because I definitely don't use the meta builds of dispersion commanders on my battleships. The closest I'll get are the hybrids from the Ezra Lane or Halloween events. Maybe even leave some ship suggestions on what I should play next and show the build. As always, I appreciate you guys who have been around my channel and following my content. But until next time, aloha.